Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. Welcome to my channel and welcome back to a journey through the Wildwood. Welcome to Woven Pixel, Well-Tempered Claire. Thanks for being here with me this morning. Today we are going to be continuing our journey through the minor arcana of the Wildwood Tarot and looking at the influences of the major arcana cards that work with that suit, and just kind of recapturing everything that we have done up until this point. And so today we will kind of complete the wheel with the minors, and in future videos I will look at some more detailed points of how the other aspects of the major arcana influence the 8 points on the wheel of the year. And we can take this wherever you want to. So it's really important in the comments below that you let me know which aspects of the deck that you would like to study further. And I'm happy to continue to make videos on this deck. It's a deck that I feel deeply connected to, and there's a lot of things that I would love to share with you if there is interest. And the other option too is to make this into a course, and we could do this privately together on Zoom. So that's another option as well, because I feel like there are endless videos I could make on this deck. And if you would like, we could do this as a course that went on for, over the course of a year and meeting once a month or something. So that's something that I've also been thinking of. So let me know what your level of interest is in this, and in particular, if there's anything that you want to study. The other thing I want to say is that today, so for those of you that are watching this in the playback or months from now, if you go to my channel and you go to intuitive readings, you Google that, or perhaps you can't, not Google it, but if you go to, when you go to somebody's channel, there's a search bar. And so you can put in the date for today, which is the 23rd of February, 2021, intuitive readings. And today I'm going to be working with one of the spreads in the Wild Magic. So one of the spreads from this book here. And so I'll be doing readings with the Wildwood Tarot with one of the spreads from that book. Okay, so that is a little bit later after I go off from here. Okay, are we good? Now the quote that is here from Henry David Thoreau is the quote that opens the suit of stones. The quote that is so there's an inspirational quote for each of the minor arcana. And I really like this. I'm just going to read it out loud just to kind of get the energy of this suit flowing. I learned this, at least, by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. So as we enter into the winter, and remember that when we're working with the Wildwood Tarot, we're working with the seasons, the shift of the seasons at the quarters. And so when I'm talking about winter in the Wildwood begins at Samhain, November 1st, and goes through to Imbolc, February 1st. And you'll see down at the bottom the mid-winter solstice, December 21st. And so this is the section of the wheel that we're going to be looking at today. Okay, so the minor arcana is stones and earth. And then the overlay that I just flashed over, the minor arcana that oversees the energy of this is the wanderer. Okay, so that would be that's the energy of the fool. And yesterday, I believe it was Kristen asked, Why would the wanderer be overseeing the winter? And so this is it's a really good question that I would like to reflect on. And there's a few things that are stated obviously in the tarot, in this tarot. And one is the importance of the wanderer being at that precipice of the end and the beginning. And so there's a few endings and beginnings in this tarot deck. And in Alison Cross's book, The Year in the Wildwood, she talks about the significance of New Year's Eve and that ending and that beginning. So there is an importance to the wanderer being there at that cross, and also to have the wanderer waiting at the abyss, which is a word. It's interesting that I like the connection between the Marielle and the use of the word abyss, and the way that the word abyss is also used in this tarot deck as well too. Perhaps that's a nice segue to the Marielle Tarot, which will be part of this Hanged Man series. Crossing the abyss, and that new adventure begins at February 1st. So there's an importance for the wanderer hanging out, ready to cross both the new beginning at January 1st, as well as another leg of the journey at February 1st. The other thing that came to me in regards to this card, I can switch to so you can see the cards. The other thing that came to me was in the suit of stones, we are looking at embodied energy. We're looking at the third dimensional experience. And the Fool is equally connected above and below, but of all of the journeyers, of all of the characters, of all of the archetypes in the tarot, the Fool really represents that connection to the third dimension. The Fool is most comfortable there. That's where the Fool's home is. And there's I spoke with a passion yesterday about the energy. Actually, it was the energy of fire. Well, so many things. The fire. Yesterday was the fire, right? And the thing about this suit is that the connections are extraordinary. So the 10 of stones, the key word is home, and it's about, you see this portal here? And so it's almost as if at that cross of the seasons between winter and spring, we have the Fool passing through this portal here. And the creators of this deck talk about the inner experience of home as well as the external experience of home. The journey is an internal experience as well as an external experience. And these inward and outward journeys and experiences are metaphorically expressed throughout this whole deck. So those are some of the reasons why the Fool lives here. And there's just something about this deck that really, really gets me. Rainbow path of hope, rainbow path of connection, the rainbow path opening doors, opening portals, the rainbow path connecting the Fool to the world tree. There's a deep connection, of course, between the 0 and the 21st card, right? The beginning and the ending. There is no beginning and ending. They both are the beginning and the ending. They both are one, just like the seer and the shaman are one. And so to have these two pairs sitting at the center of the wheel is very, very supportive of readings and building connections and understandings. And so take these layers one at a time and start to, work your way into into the deck. Let's go to another picture. Hi, Kristen. And we'll go to, where should we go? So many little things I've created here. In the season of stones, the moon energy is dominant in the midwinter solstice. And it's also important to understand that the moon and the sun are not separate. The moon and the sun work with each other. They flow with each other. They're not separate entities. And they represent aspects of divine feminine, divine masculine. The solar lunar energy cannot be without one another. And though this is the dominant energy in the winter season and the lower half of the wheel, according to this deck, it's never isolated. You know, it's not on its own. I have one more thing I want to share with you before we go on to the cards. The whole idea of the suit of stones is one of being here, being now, being in this world. And there's also an aspect of creativity that is really important to this suit. And I think Allison really captures this well when this is from the page where one of the pages where she talks about the moon, the ability to see the unusual in the commonplace is the hallmark of creativity. And sometimes that perception can only be seen in the dark, right? It can only be seen in perhaps in the illumination of the moon or from a different viewpoint, right? The dark represents, you can use the dark as a metaphor. It's a different way of looking at things. There is less light. And so we use a different lens. Okay. Okay, so we're going to, of course, go through the animals that are associated with this deck. And we start with the king, which is the wolf. And so the king heralds in this season of winter. And you can see on the wheel, we have November 1st, Samhain. And so the energy of the wolf is deeply connected with Samhain as a messenger, as a protector of those who are traveling, of course, across the plane between the worlds. Also, the fact that the wolf is so comfortable in the winter and can be seen as a guardian of the dead, can be seen as a messenger, and is so importantly connected to the energy of the moon itself. So the wolf, the king of stones, is the wolf. The queen of stones is the bear. This animal is well, this one looks more like a grizzly. Actually, I'm more familiar with black bears, but it's such a beautiful energy. And the predominant quality of the bear in this deck is one of a protector of the land. The other thing about the suit of stones is that it really, really does speak to earth and respect for the earth, respect for nature, respect for Mother Nature. And that is, I suppose that's one of the qualities in many, many tarot decks that I find is missing. There is so much emphasis on the suit of stones, the suit of pentacles with the monetary and the material. And very few decks dive into the connection with the earth itself. And that is an essential and important quality of this deck. And one of the reasons I connect with it so deeply. The horse is the knight, and this is not a domesticated horse. This is a wild horse. And the energy here is one of definitely of a free spirit. As I've mentioned before, both the queen and the knight touch the solstice. So the queens and the knights sit on either side of the solstices and the equinoxes. So you can kind of remember that energetically if you're doing readings and you're looking for a little bit of timing information. Health, vigor is really important here in this card. And so when we think of the Knight of Pentacles, normally we think of someone who is quite not moving energetically and quickly. So this does have a slightly different frequency than an RWS Knight of Pentacles. There's really a sense of, I guess not so much, right? Stamina, think of horse, long, the ability to take long journeys, self-sufficiency on your path. And one of the beautiful phrases that comes from the guidebook is, let the horse carry you. And that might mean something very different to each of you. Let the horse carry you. And the page, so the page that takes us into the season of spring and takes us out of the season of winter, is the lynx. Very a hunter, of course. The thing about this lynx is its rashness, for lack of a better word. Hello, Burning Dreamer. There's something about the lynx sitting here, and while the lynx is at the top of the food chain and is an excellent hunter, a fierce protector, a protector much like the mother bear is a protector, there is something about the caution of the wildness and the impulsiveness of the wildness. And so I suppose that's why it's sitting here as a page. And with this card, there's a bit of a caution to watch that tendency perhaps to act before you think. So there's a lot of hunters in this deck, and some of them are more cautious. Some of them take their time, and they're about precision. One of them that comes to mind is the kingfisher, right? So the kingfisher has very different energy than the page of stones. Okay, so at the midwinter solstice, so move straight down through here, we have the horse, the wild horse, sitting on one side and the mother bear on the other. And then remember, in the minors, the card that sits at the middle is the sixes. So I'm going to do this a little differently today, just to kind of, this will help review some of the things that we've already talked about in the previous 3 videos. So the sixes sit at that center line. This 6 is a card of challenge. It's a card of awareness of your environment, and to make sure that you are not exploiting resources. This is a huge teaching. There are so many layers to this card. One of the things just now, this very second, that came to mind was your own inner resources as well too. You know, the resources that we waste, the excessive words, the wasted mental chatter, the wasted time. And so while this card is specifically focusing on natural resources, wasting of tools, wasting of plants, land, energy, it's a really big card. And so I love that this reflection is included in this deck. You see we've got hives here. The hives are sitting on the 6 stones. And I can go on and talk about every single card. I could do a 30-minute video on every single card in this deck. It's just really something. Okay, so too many cards on the table. Let's get rid of some of these. Okay, so at the beginning of the season of stones, sorry, little movement here on the table. Let's talk about the ace and the 2. Okay, didn't unplug the landline. The Ace of Stones. So look at the shape of this as well too. So this is meant to be the shape of an arrow. And there's something about the solid nature, the firmament, the protection of the trees that are surrounding the standing stone. It's like anything is possible here. If you put both your feet on the ground and you commit, this is a time of endless possibilities. And you're going to see in the Suit of Stones several cards that emphasize the connection to the earth. And through that connection to the earth, we can really start to grow and move and manifest. And without that connection and that understanding of earth, of what that means, of the Mother Earth, we can get lost. And so this suit really reminds us to be grounded, to be connected with nature, whatever that means to you. Now that we have seen the hare before, the queen of fire, right? The queen of fire. So the queen that sat up in the season of summer. All kinds of noises today. And here we have two hares, and the stones are beneath the hare's feet. So these two hares are battling for dominance. There's lots of twos that are reflected in this card. There's trees on either side. There's plants on either side of the rocks here. There's a similar plant coming out of the grass here. So lots of twos in reflection. This two is not so much a two of balance. We're going to see a balance card a little bit later in this suit. The two of stones, the key word is challenges, but this is a card that asks us to reflect on what is underlying those challenges. Is it an insecurity? What is it that's at the base of those challenges? Sometimes we honestly need to go through those challenges. They're really, really important, and it's important to confront people, but it's always a choice. And so that's a word that I would say that connects an RWS meaning, but it has, to me, this is more of a 5 of fire RWS meaning than a 2 of pentacles RWS meaning, if that makes sense to you. And then the 3. And so here is another card of connection and the acknowledgement of the connection. And so we're still in the time of the king, or just leaving the time of the king. And here we have a green woman. You can see the bottom of her dress. I'll just hold that up for you, right? Is actually roots. And so the card is creativity. So I want you to think about all of the connections in this deck. The other thing too, so I didn't mention here, we have the labyrinth again. One of the ways in working with this deck when you're doing a reading is to do a really quick scan of the symbols that come up. We've seen lots of labyrinths in this deck. And so you want to follow the pathways of the common symbols. And on the stones, there's often carvings, and you can find symbols on those carvings to create pathways through your readings. And so here, this whole notion of creativity, much like that quote I shared with you about the moon, is this connection is really, really important aspect of this suit. Yeah. Okay, and then Queen. So I'm showing you these kind of in the order. The order that they appear through this season. And so Queen 4, I have always loved this card. There's something about this 4 of stones that just really touches my heart. And of course, if you want to bring in a sense of, that You know, when the king or the emperor or whoever he is, the Lord is sitting inside his castle and he's got one pentacle underneath his feet and two in his hands and one on his head. And there's this sense of insularness, right? And being inside and not looking to the beautiful sunrise or sunset in the distance. Sunset, it looks like to me. There is a very similar quality here, but I also really feel the protection and the safety. And I feel like sometimes in the RWS, a card is either negative or positive. And yeah, that does happen in this deck as well too. But this card has always made me reflect on the Four of Stones a little bit more, in that there is a sense of safety within. And sometimes we need that. And so we need to discern whether we are talking about safety and protection, or we're talking about a sense of clinging and all of that. And I don't really get that energy with this particular Four of Stones. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Okay. It's too bad Gerald's not here, because I was going to, Gerald, who is known by several different channel names, the Hermit's Mage is one of them. And yesterday on YouTube, I was watching, what was it called? Working towards wellness. And Kristen was there as well too, who's in the chat. And this, I was having a chat with, not really a chat, a couple comments back and forth with Simon from the Hermit's Cave. And this, isn't that funny that I'm talking about the Hermit's Cave and this kind of looks exactly like the Hermit's Cave? This Five of Stones is another card that is very, very touching to me. And I really feel the inner resource here, that sometimes the importance of turning in is more valuable than reaching out. And that was our conversation yesterday. You know, sometimes it takes tremendous bravery to reach out. And I feel like in a Five of Pentacles, with that church in the background, sometimes that separateness, there's this space between the foreground and the background. And why don't you just turn around and go into the church where it's warm? There may be food available, drink available, support, counseling. Why are you choosing not to reach out? So there's those questions, but also there's the questions of the internal resources. And in this particular Five of Stones, I really feel the internal resources and the strength of the internal resources. Sometimes withdrawing is a way to process trauma, right? And to bring focus and to gain emotional resilience. So Amber, please don't bark. Please don't bark. Yeah, I know you want to bark. And then we come to the Six, so that here we have the Knight. Sorry, the Queen and then the Knight. So both the Queen and the Knight touch this card. And this is a really good exercise to do as you are working with this deck. I really encourage you. So right now, if you are in the Northern Hemisphere, to be kind of doing this exercise on a daily basis with the arrows, with the suit of air. And if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, to be doing this with the vessels, because that's where we are in the wheel of the year right now. It's nice to just figure out what these underlying layers are. So both the Queen, the Knight, touch the Sixes. The Six is right at the solstice. And I've already spoken to this card. And then, so then we have the Seven. And the Eight. Okay. Do you kind of get a Four of Swords vibe from the Seven of Stones? I know I do. The healing energy. So we have a green woman or man here. We have a warrior, a hunter. And this card really does speak to kind of exactly what I was talking about with the five. Sometimes we need to reach out, and that reaching out can be to a healer. That reaching out can be to the divine, right? It can be to the universe. And so the process of healing can happen in many different ways. And this card, Seven of Stones, so patience. And patience is the most common keyword, I think, from an RWS, meaning there is a quality of patience that is, of course, necessary in healing. We often want to rush our healing. And so you could bring in that layer as well, too. And if you think about a figure standing in front of the garden, patiently watching the garden to grow, you know, there is a reciprocal energy of the medicine from the garden, even though the figure is not eating the plants or eating the fruit. And so, yeah, just pause and talk these cards through, because you can find these ties and these ways to weave the RWS in here if that is important to how you want to read the deck, or how you want to, you know, understand and start to remember what these cards mean. The Eight of Stones is very RWS, so I don't really need to speak to that, but look to the symbols. This handprint on the wall, look for other handprints in the deck. We have three vessels. Do we? No, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Interesting. Okay, so I just noticed this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool. Okay, so there's lots of different things you could bring into here, because we have this group of three here. What I was going to talk about was the hand, and the handprint being the mark of the person, the creator of the cave, if you will. But this is a card of resources. It's a card of skill, much like an RWS deck is. And then the last one, where did we go? We want to have the page, the links. And then we move to the 9 and the 10. So here is the 9 and the 10. And we've already looked at the 10, which is a really pretty card. And then Mr. Links, where are you? Here you are. Okay, so 9 of Stones, 9 of Stones, 9 of Pentacles, abundance, wealth, nearing the end of the cycle. And here the key word is tradition. This is a card that speaks to deep ancestral connection. And a card that is, again, lots of symbols, lots of things that you can tie in. In Allison's book at the back, she speaks to, and she has lists. So she lists all the cards that have snakes. And this is a torque. I don't think in any of the books they talk about the symbology of the torque. So this is a really cool symbol to look up. This is a symbol connecting. Perhaps this figure here is deeply connected to a warrior lineage, a lineage of leaders, maybe even through Viking lineage, maybe through Celtic kings. But this is these symbols of the snake, the torque, other things that you might find connect to the ancestors. And also when I think of the full moon, I think of deep connections to something distant and something through different planes of time. The keyword is tradition. So I would really expand that keyword to bring in the energy of ancestral connection and perhaps respecting ancestral connections. So to me, this is a card that really talks about creating altars to create sacred space for connection through our lineages, right? Like I have a lineage of my bloodline. I have a lineage of my adoptive family. I have a lineage of my yogic family. I have lineages from other connections as well too. So remember, we have multiple traditions and lines of and lineages through which we can find connection. And then I think it's really beautiful that these two cards sit beside each other, right? So through our lineages, we can experience home. It is exactly, Kristen. This is the shaman from that cauldron. So, and what you will find in this book what you will find not only in the book but in the deck is you will Mark Ryan and John Matthews have done a lot of traveling. They've done a lot of traveling to sacred sites, to different, they've experienced shamanic practices in different places in the world. And they reference drawings and cave etchings and information from stones, not just in the UK and Ireland, but in different places in the world. And so their knowledge, their wealth of knowledge is huge. And a lot of that is brought in sometimes in a more subtle way, but these connections are deep. And it's not a superficial deck in any way. Like they know what they're doing. So if you have, I put this on intentionally today, and I'm so glad I didn't forget to talk about it. So this is I wonder if I can take it off. I'll try. How is it? This is an Andean cross. And this was given to me when I completed my first shamanic wheel. And the wheel, the medicine wheel, the wheel of the year, there's connections between all of these wheels. And the more you study the metaphor of the wheel itself, the more you can start to understand or appreciate or find respect for or connections to your own dharma, to your own, it's so beautiful. So when I completed this wheel and have spent time, with this wheel and other wheels, what is my point? My point is this. My point is, if we start to understand and become more deeply connected with the natural cycles of life, with the turning of the seasons, with the changing of the seasons, the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the sun, the cycles of our body, the cycles of life, the observing our pets, our animals, the wildlife outside, the more we can be in the flow of that. And I see my experience with this as just another layer of understanding the importance of being in the flow and not resisting whatever is present with us. So if it's cold, be in the cold. Celebrate the cold. Celebrate what is around you at that time. if you're in the dark, right? If you're in the winter and it's cold and it's dark, find joy in the candlelight. Find bliss in the crunch of the snow. And find a way to, stay warm. And be grateful for that experience of warmth, which is very different than the warmth in the sun. With women and deeper awareness of the moon cycles. And I have found in working with lots of different women that the more awareness you have of the external moon and the external moon cycle, the greater the chances that your internal moon cycle will start to sync with the moon. And when that happens, it's like, yes. And so we want to find that in all of the cycles of our life. Okay, so yeah. So I think that's why this deck resonates with me. It's because it has such a deep respect for the cycles of life. So thanks for hanging out with me today. And again, in a little bit, I'll be back on and I'll be doing one of the spreads from Candy's drawing a wheel. Isn't that funny, Candy? Yesterday when I was chatting with Candy or something was going on, she was drawing something perfectly in sync with what was in the chat of what we were talking about. And here she is today, tuning in, listening, and I'm chatting about the wheel. So I can't not comment on this, Kristen. The shaman, it's very, very intimidating. It's not an easy experience to sit before a shaman or to sit before a guru. There is this, at least for me, there's this almost a fear of what can they see? What do they know about me? And I really feel that we need to step away from that. When we have these, I talked about my darshan a couple of times with Amma in Kerala, in India. When we are in the presence of an enlightened being, they only emit love. They only aspire love for you. Love, peace, freedom, connection, all of those frequencies that help us to evolve. And so they may say something or give you a practice or encourage you to do something that will help you work through a pattern that they know that you're ready to start working through. But they're never disappointed with you. Disappointment is not something that is a part of their, I believe, is not part of their, it's not part of their repertoire. Disappointment is a very egoic thing. It's very low frequency. And any enlightened being, any shaman, any medicine man or guru is not in the frequency of disappointment. No way. So know that when you were given that gift, that gift is something that will only help to shine light and remember to inspire, aspire to higher frequencies. Yeah. Okay, so thank you. Thanks for being here. And again, I will wait. I'm going to await your, I know that Andrew Well-Tempered Claire commented about more on the major arcana. So I think I will do a video on the majors and their connections to the 8 points on the wheel. And then we'll kind of take it from there and see who wants to, if any of you want to spend any more time with this deck. Okay. So I will see you all very soon. Namaste. Stay well.